morning. It is Thursday, the 26th of March. I'm Maeve McMahon, and you're watching Europe Today, your daily digest of European news and analysis in just 20 minutes. Coming up, with wars ongoing in Ukraine and the Middle East, G7 foreign ministers are meeting for crisis talks today and tomorrow in France. We'll look at what is uniting and dividing them. And ahead of imminent parliamentary elections, Hungary is making headlines over an alleged breach of EU trust. We'll hear from the former European Commission boss, José Manuel Barroso. But first, Iran has rejected a US-backed 15-point ceasefire plan, even though President Trump insists they want a deal, quote, badly. This as the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah continues, with Israel saying it may occupy Lebanon's south long term. The European Union has sent 100 million in humanitarian aid to Lebanon and is mobilising a further 1 billion to meet needs on the ground. For more, we can head straight over to Sur in Arabic. That's a city in southern Lebanon, and bring in Euronews correspondent Iqbal Zain. Good morning, Iqbal. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on the programme. Just first, describe the situation there and tell us how people are holding up.
Good morning, Maeve. So people are exhausted and somehow feeling isolated, especially after the Israeli army targeted key bridges linking south areas to north areas of the Litani River. Now movement have become very much difficult. Most people that stayed here in Sur said they stayed because they have no other choice, because at the beginning of the war, the Lebanese government didn't provide any adequate facilities and any adequate shelters. And also rent prices in relatively safer areas have surged far beyond a normal Lebanese citizen can afford. What I can say right now is that daily life have almost collapsed. Most shops are closed, most pharmacies, most bakeries, also most fuel stations have shut down. And people fear that in the coming few days, we might suffer from a fuel shortage and food shortage.
And are people feeling safe there? Is the bombing constant?
Well, it's frequent and unexpected. We can hear the Israeli jets flying at a very low height, also the Israeli drones, and also missiles launched from Hezbollah and Iran could be heard.
And how many people have fled the city?
Well, most of people have already left the city at the beginning of the war and following the Israeli evacuation order that covered most of Sur area and mentioned for the first time specific camps and refugee camps where around 50,000 Palestinian refugees live. So the city is noticeably emptier.
And just a final point on Trump's comments that potentially there could be peace talks soon. Do people have any faith or trust in him?
Well, I think not, because people don't rely much on Trump's statement, because the U.S. president is very much unpredictable. And also the Israeli talked about expanding a potential buffer zone till it reaches Litani, have raised real concerns here.
OK, Iqbal Zain, thank you so much for that live update there from southern Lebanon, from Sur. Now, meanwhile, back here in Brussels, there is discomfort over reports the Hungarian foreign minister and the Hungarian government have allegedly been informing Russian authorities about the content of private EU meetings. Euronews' Maria Tadeo sat down with the former president of the European Commission, José Manuel Barroso, and asked him what exactly he thought about these allegations.
These news are indeed very disturbing and greatly concerning, because the European Union, it's made on trust.
Yes.
Trust among the member states. So, in fact, as you mentioned, I was leading many European Union meetings, and of course with Hungary and with others. I respect all countries, but sometimes there are governments that do not respect some fundamental principles, including this principle that is not a vague principle. It's, in fact, a principle that is in the treaties, in the Lisbon Treaty, Article 4, number 3. It's the duty of sincere cooperation among member states. So if one country is now briefing or debriefing other countries on very sensitive matters, and other countries, in this case Russia, being today a clear opponent, not to say an enemy, of the European Union. So, of course, it is greatly concerning. And the clarifications provided so far by the Hungarian government are not really clarifications. In fact, in a way, it's even worse because, if I understood correctly, according to the media reports I've seen, the Hungarian foreign minister said that he irregularly briefs not only Russia, but United States, Turkey, Israel, and Serbia on this matter. So the very fact that the government of a European Union and a NATO country puts at the same level the United States and Russia, it's quite strange, I would say. And I think it raises very important matters of loyalty among member states.
But the question, sir, and obviously you know the treaties very well, is what can the EU do about this? Because the feeling that we get in Brussels is that there are no tools to counter this.
No, there are tools. But first of all, I always thought this is basically political. So, and there are ways of the European countries in the European institutions to show their concerns and also somehow politically to act on this matter. So it means that tomorrow, if Hungary makes the point, or any country says, we are a sovereign country, we can do this on our own. Yes, they are sovereign. But one thing they should understand is that the others are also sovereign. So the others can also meet without Hungary.
So what does that mean?
It means that tomorrow, for sensitive matters, there is nothing in the treaties that makes it impossible the others, the other 27, or in this case, the other 26 or 25, depending on those countries who break the rules, not to be in the same room with the others. In the past, it already happened in a way. It was not so dramatic, but you remember when, during the financial crisis, when some countries pushed for a fiscal compact, a fiscal treaty, I remember it was the United Kingdom that said, our sovereignty should be respected, we don't want that treaty. And at that time, other countries said, look, you have your own sovereignty, but if you don't have that treaty, okay, we don't do it with the European Union as such, but we do it ourselves. There are very clear, besides the legal matters, because from a legal point of view, the European Union can launch infringements if there is a violation of Article 4 of the Lisbon Treaty, but beyond the legal measures, I think it's even more effectively, politically, we can always show to a country that behaves like that, not respecting the basic principles of decency, that the countries can move on politically as well.
So, Mr. Barroso, because this is very important, your advice for the head of the Commission, von der Leyen, for Kaja Kallas, the capitals right now is not to wait for the clarification or the legal assessment, but to simply cut them out. Don't invite them into meetings.
No, I did not say that.
No.
What I said, and by the way, not just to the president, basically this is for the president of the European Council. This is not for the European Commission as such, because it's a matter of breaking the confidence between the countries themselves. And it is, in fact, leaking information about the European Council. So what I think, first of all, they should clarify. If the clarification is not sufficient, I think in some matters, the president of the European Council can perfectly say, now we are going to meet without Hungary. It's very important that we have in Hungary and in all member states, countries and governments that respect the basic principles of decent behavior and trust. And if they don't, they should. There should be a reaction of the other countries and European institutions.
When you look at the European leadership now, you talk about the different voices and the different sensitivities. Who is best representing the interests of the European Union on the global stage?
I know there is always that debate in Europe about a kind of a face or a...
Yes.
And I believe that's not the right approach to European leadership. The question that we have to ask ourselves, are we in Europe in favor of having someone in Brussels signing executive orders like the US president? No, we don't have. The Commission is doing its job, the President of the European Council is doing its job, and the governments, namely the governments of the most influential countries, are trying to do their job. So it's, by definition, European leadership is more institutional based than personal based, which is not necessarily bad, you see. And I think it's, with that experience of 22 years in the European Union decision-making, I tell you, we are not going to get in the future, in the foreseeable future, one voice, one face, one leader. And although very often I said, I would like to have, because it will be quicker, it will be more decisive, the reality is that there are also some advantages in avoiding a centralized, completely centralized leadership because sometimes we have seen other parts of the world, it does not work better because they are only one.
Jose Manuel Barroso there speaking to our Maria Tadeo. Now, apart from that diplomatic scandal, Hungary is also being criticised for blocking a €90 billion loan to Ukraine over the Druzhba pipeline spat. This was, of course, a major theme of a recent summit here in Brussels. To find out if there's been any movement here, we can now turn to our Ukraine correspondent, Sasha Vakalina. Good morning, Sasha. So what are Ukraine's options now?
Well, Ukraine publicly has been stating that it has full trust in the European Union and the President of the European Commission and the President of the European Council, who have insisted that the EU will find a way of unblocking those 90 billion loan to Ukraine. But at the same time, Kyiv is running out of money and needs this financial support really urgently, and it is looking at other possible partners. With the escalation in the Middle East, those partners could be indeed in the Middle East and in the Gulf regions, among the countries who have officially requested Ukraine's help and expertise in countering Iranian drones. And President Zelensky did admit it, saying that Ukraine is looking for other partners elsewhere away from Europe. Let's take a listen.
Ukraine offers a mutually beneficial partnership. We can strengthen those who can strengthen us. We can see that we are being blocked in Europe, and as long as the risk remains, we need to look for further opportunities to strengthen our position. The Middle East and the Gulf region represent, in our view, the right direction to take and offer significant opportunities to strengthen our position.
President Zelensky there losing a little bit of patience with Brussels. Of course, we've been discussing this potential loan for months here, but Brussels has promised they will find a way to unlock this loan, Sasha, but yet we're seeing Budapest now halting gas transit as well to Ukraine.
Absolutely. Let's take a little step back and see what is it that Hungary has been blocking for a while. Now, we have this 90 billion loan. We also have the new package of sanctions against Russia also being blocked by Hungary. There is also a veto regarding the opening of the clusters and any proceedings regarding Ukraine's EU accession process. Now, recently, Hungary also announced it would cut diesel, electricity, and now natural gas transit. Now, these are all those tools already used or announced by Budapest. That doesn't really leave much rest in this arsenal. What else can Hungary do in this dispute with Kyiv over the Druzhba pipeline? Now, let's take a listen to what Viktor Orban had to say about these new measures.
Ukraine has been blocking the operations of the Friendship oil pipeline for 30 days. In order to break the oil blockade and ensure Hungary's secure energy supply, further measures are now needed. Therefore, we will gradually halt gas deliveries from Hungary to Ukraine and store the remaining volumes at home. As long as Ukraine does not supply oil, it will not receive gas from Hungary.
Hungary is indeed a very important transit route for natural gas for Ukraine. It represents around 30% of all the inputs. But at the same time, Ukraine Foreign Ministry said that at this stage, Ukraine has enough to go on for a while. But also there are alternative routes that have already been discovered and used. First and foremost, this is Poland. So it remains to be seen how strong and how efficient for Budapest this new measure would be in this dispute over Druzhba.
Okay, thank you so much, Sasha. Sasha Vakalina there reporting for us. And now to take a look at how all these issues are impacting Polish-Hungarian relations, our Polish reporter, Jakub Janis, brings us this report.
Not so long ago, Poland and Hungary used to be the ultimate power couple of Central Europe. Today, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk is publicly calling Budapest's alleged handling of EU secrets a disgrace and strongly condemns its growing loyalty to Moscow. And this is no longer just a political disagreement. It's a full-blown fracture built over years of Russian connections and ideological clashes. So let's see the timeline, shall we? Under Polish previous law and justice government, Warsaw and Budapest were inseparable, shielding each other from the EU's penalties. But Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine caused a massive crack. Poland became Kyiv's biggest champion, while Viktor Orban refused to break his ties with Vladimir Putin. And the rift grew so deep that even Polish conservative leader Jarosław Kaczyński told Orban to get his eyes checked over Russian atrocities. Fast forward to today and the situation got even more tense. Budapest has become a safe haven for wanted law and justice politicians fleeing Tusk's new government. And former Polish Justice Minister Zbigniew Ziobro is currently hiding in Hungary, evading criminal charges of corruption and abuse of power. And the relationship derailed completely this week after reports that Hungary's foreign minister was allegedly leaking EU meeting details to Moscow, prompting Tusk to admit Warsaw has suspected this betrayal for years. Now the conflict is tearing Poland itself apart. MAGA-aligned Polish President Karol Nawrocki is defying pro-EU Tusk by traveling to Budapest to stand with Orban right before the April 12 elections. And it is an ironic twist of history. These two nations shared monarchs in the late Middle Ages, like Louis the Great and Stefan Batory. And after centuries of surviving empires, world wars and communism together, it seems that current geopolitical alliances and Russian ties are breaking a relationship long defined by the old proverb, Pole and Hungarian, two good friends, together for the sword and the wine.
Jakub Janis reporting for us there. Now, moving on, foreign ministers of the G7, so the group of seven that includes Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, the US and the European Union, are gathering in an abbey today and tomorrow near Paris. On their agenda, the ongoing wars in the Middle East and Ukraine, a global energy crisis and a choked Strait of Hormuz. For more on what we should expect, I'm joined here in the studio by Euronews' correspondent Maya Delabum. So quite a context here that they're gathering in. What should we expect?
Yes, as you said, the foreign affairs ministers of the G7 are gathering near Paris to talk about the most pressing issues. We know what these issues are, mainly Iran, but also how to enhance support for Ukraine. So this comes at a very sensitive time, as you know. We have conflicting reports now on whether America is really talking to Iranians, if there is a peace plan going on right now. Clearly, on Ukraine, the other issue is how to talk about Ukraine when this issue has been really overshadowed by Iran in the past week. So how to put back Iran on the agenda, Ukraine on the agenda, and how to enhance support. And this will be very interesting for the G7, for Europeans in the G7 to talk to Rubio about this, to have a first, account of what is happening in Iran and with Ukraine.
Well, they're hoping they'll get more information on this peace plan, this potential peace plan.
Yes, so we talk about a potential peace plan, but nothing is very certain. Nothing is really confirmed. On the one side, you have, ongoing talks between Americans and Iranians, and Pakistan is being the country brokering these negotiations. We hear about a 15-point peace plan there, but nothing is confirmed. And on the other side, you have ongoing strikes in Iran, and you have an announcement from the Pentagon saying that they will send 2,000 airborne troops. So, the war is still there, and on the other side, there are talks of peace. So it's not very clear, as we know from the start, it's not clear, but it's not clear now. So Rubio will be the one maybe giving a little more clarity on the situation.
So all eyes, of course, on Marco Rubio for some clarity on what is next on a war that, of course, is really impacting us here in the European Union. Maya Delabum, thank you so much for that update. Well, that brings this edition of Europe Today to an end. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, stay with us here, though, on Euronews to catch a fresh, very fiery edition of The Ring, our weekly debating show that comes to you from the European Parliament here in Brussels. Thanks again for watching. Take care and see you soon on Euronews.